Good morning to all of you once again. This is our third online class and the second on the responses to Shakespeare in the continent and the subcontinent, apart from Shakespeare's lifetime and stage, which forms Unit 1 of the course ENG 205, second semester MA in English. I hope and expect that all of you, your families, and your neighbors, the people who live in your community, are all keeping well and are very consciously abiding by the directions of the government during this time of lockdown and uh, confinement. Now, as I told you in the previous meeting with you, that we would be discussing Shakespeare's plays as they have been received, adopted, performed, studied in the subcontinent. That will form the component of today's discussion. So we have subcontinental theatrical responses to Shakespeare. In the beginning, I would like to draw your attention to a few works on this area, but these are really very few. I would say they aren't even 0.5% of the research and study that has been conducted on Shakespeare in India and Shakespeare in Bengal. The first very important book is a product of the DRS research activity of the Department of English, Jadavpur University, and it is an edited volume edited by Professors Shukanto Choudhury and Anando Lal, who are themselves Shakespeare scholars who need no introduction, from Papyrus in 2001, and the name of the book is Shakespeare on the Calcutta Stage, a Checklist. And here there is intensive and extensive researched material on the performance of Shakespeare's plays on the Calcutta stage. Then you have their website, shakespeareinbengal.in, which is a multimedia archive of the same department, which is the result of their DRS project. Then you have the Bengali drama, its origin and development by P. Guho Thakurda, and you can see that it had been published in the pre-independence time in 1930. You have the story of the Calcutta theatres between 1753 and 1980 by Sushil Kumar Mukherjee, and it has been published in 1982. So these dates point towards the continual interest and research in Shakespeare and his interface with the Bengali audience, the Bengali stage, and the Bengali readership, and the Bengali students and teachers. You have in States Unborn, Shakespeare Overseas, an essay published in the Times Literary Supplement in 1964, and it had been written by D.J. Enright. You have Shakespeare and Bengali Theatre by S.K. Bhattacharya, published in the Sahitya Academy Journal, Indian Literature, Volume 7 in 1964. And this was a special volume on the Indian response to Shakespeare, as you will find that there are some other essays in the same volume. All of them have been borrowed from JSTOR, which even you can access. You have different Shakespeares, the bard in colonial stroke post-colonial India by Jyotsna Singh. You have Shakespeare in Bengali literature by R.K. Dasgupta in that 1964 Sahitya Academy edition of Indian literature. You have Shakespeare in India by K.R. Srinivasa Iyengar. All these persons are eminent Shakespeare scholars. And of course, you have a papyrus monograph on Shakespeare for the Bengali reader, and it is deceptively very small because it contains a lot of data which could be compiled by such a person who is an eminent Shakespeare scholar, a teacher of many teachers like us, Professor Shapon Kumar Chakraborty. So, with that, we move on to our discussion for today. Today's session shall focus on the stage responses in Bengal to the two plays by Shakespeare which have been earmarked for your study, namely Macbeth and Twelfth Night. In our last session, we had made a cursory review of the continental stage responses to these two plays. Now, we shall take a look at the subcontinental stage responses, and since that is a huge area, we shall confine ourselves to the response in Calcutta or Kolkata, as the place is known today, to Shakespeare's plays with a focus on Macbeth and Twelfth Night. Therefore, we can say that the stage responses to Shakespeare's plays in Calcutta were nurtured by two factors. First of all, the question that arises in our minds is that why did Shakespeare become so popular in Bengal in general and in Calcutta in particular? What are the factors that were behind this? So, there were two factors. The first, the inclusion of his plays in the teaching learning process, that is in the syllabi, in the curricular of the different colleges and universities. Number two, the interest for play going among two categories of persons who lived in Kolkata in the beginning, in the late 18th and 19th centuries onwards. The British who had come to stay in Kolkata as part of the administration of the growing British Empire in India and beyond in the subcontinent. Because, the British Empire spanned today's Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, and even certain parts of Nepal. So, the interest for playgoing among the British was there, and it was there among some native residents of Kolkata. Now, these native residents were people who belonged to the Babu category, who belonged to the upper middle class and aristocracy, and who had access to westernized education. We'll come to that soon after. The second important thing was that the first factor is that the plays were nurtured by the two factors I have already mentioned. The second point is that they led to the formation of societies and associations which focused on the reading, translation, adaptation, and performance of Shakespeare's plays. Now, with this in mind, we could keep an eye on a few significant issues. They are like this. In 1775, Calcutta Theatre, the first theatre house in Calcutta, was built around this time. We are not certain about the exact date. And among the repertoire of plays performed were Shakespeare's Hamlet and Richard III. Then, quite some time afterwards, in 1816, a landmark event happened. Apparently, this is unconnected with the stage response to Shakespeare, but actually it is deeply connected with it. In 1816, the Hindu College was founded, and the Hindu College later became the Presidency College, which is today's Presidency University, where eminent teachers taught Shakespeare, creating a taste for both his literary and his theatrical richness. So this is from where the natives were interested in Shakespeare's plays. Influential teachers in the Hindu or later called the Presidency College, included Captain David Lester Richardson, and he was like a pillar to Shakespeare's studies in the Hindu College. Along with him, there was a person about whom we already know, Henry Louis Vivian de Rosio, who was so popular among his students and who facilitated the formation of the Young Bengal Society, that there was a tremendous contribution made by this person towards Shakespeare studies and towards inculcating a love for Shakespeare in the Bengali society. Then you have another great teacher, Professor H. M. Percival, and he was followed by Professor J. W. Home. Now, besides these four great teachers who were actually in the process of initiating a great inheritance, a great legacy of Shakespeare's studies and understanding and love for Shakespeare, there was another teacher who was teaching at the University of Calcutta, and his name is Professor Jitendranath Banerjee. He was professor in the Department of English, University of Calcutta. So these five persons are like the Pandavas who set the trend for reading, understanding, performing, adapting Shakespeare in Kolkata in particular and Bengal in general, and also they had influenced others beyond. This practice of having Shakespeare's plays for classroom teaching was imbibed by most of the academic institutions of Kolkata at that time. And we will mention some of these institutions when we take a look at the different performances of Shakespeare's plays. Now, this tradition of a secular humanist approach continued in the readings of teachers like Professors Prabodh Chandra Ghosh, Professor Shubodh Chandra Sengupta, Professor Jyoti Bhushan Bhattacharya, Professor Arun Kumar Dasgupta, Professor Shanta Mohalanobish, Professor Kajol Sengupta, Professor Shukanto Chaudhuri, Professor Shapan Kumar Chakraborty, Professor Dhriti Kanto Lahiri Chaudhuri, Professor Subhash Sarkar. The list is not exclusive. There are others whom I have not mentioned here, but they are no less. Now, that tradition, which was continued by the second group of teachers whom I have mentioned here, has also been continued in our own Vidyasagar University after it had been founded by eminent faculty in the Department of English. So they are torchbearers, and they are Professor Topon Jyoti Bandopadhyay, Professor Akram Hossein Molla, Professor Tirthankar Das Purokayastho, Professor Debashish Bandopadhyay, and Professor Joyjeet Ghosh. So now you can connect yourselves to that great tradition which had been set in Shakespeare studies, Shakespeare understanding, and Shakespeare performance. And you must not forget that there are the numerous faculty in the colleges across the state, if not in the country, who have also been and are continuing to be the torch bearers of this legacy. So it is like a torch which is being handed down from generation to generation. And the Bengalis' love for Shakespeare in the classroom and outside the classroom on the stage continues. That is why he is there in Unit 1 of your course number ENG 205. Now, let us take stock of the parameters which contributed to the growth in interest in Shakespearean theatre in Bengal in general and in Calcutta in particular. Since Calcutta was the capital of the British Empire in India and many Britishers lived here, Shakespeare's theatre found an early reception here in Calcutta, arriving with the same Britishers who came from different parts of the British Isles to work and live in Kolkata. This theatre then served for their entertainment and gathering where they could meet each other and enjoy a flavor of their own countrymen's theatrical oeuvre. Another important factor as far as the native participation is concerned is definitely Lord Macaulay's minute on education, because the result of this minute was that it facilitated education in number one, the westernized model, number two, in the English language. So the moment native students entered into the westernized system, which included Shakespeare in the syllabi and in the English language, they got to be trained in a first hand acquaintance with the Shakespeare text, which itself is a repository of good, great literature and language. So, as a result, Shakespeare's play texts, which were also exceptional works of literature and language, were included in the curriculum, and what happened was history. So let us now come to the stage response to Shakespeare and take a quick look at the significant milestones in the growth and progress of the response to Shakespeare in Kolkata. 1813, Chowrungi Theatre was opened. Where was it opened? At the junction of Chowrungi Road and Theatre Road, today's Birla Planetarium crossing at the mouth of Shakespeare Sharoni. It operated for 26 years, from 1813 to 1839, and it housed many Shakespeare performances. Unfortunately, it was gutted by a fire in 1839. So there was the need for a playhouse to meet the requirements of entertainment and edification of the Calcutta theatre goers, who were by now accustomed to and were eager for Shakespeare plays in performance. The upper class of Calcutta, which had access to westernized education, therefore became passionate lovers of this place. To see and also to be seen was the fashion that grew around this theatre. You go to watch a play, but also people see that you are there. So, you are elite, you have a taste for sophisticated entertainment. So, it is good to be seen there too. In 1837, the Bengali students staged the court scene from the Merchant of Venice in the governor's house. So you see how the empire was also encouraging the native response to their poet. And in and through this encouragement, then, the Bard of Avon, which at one point of time seemed to be a part of the rulers, filtered into the quote unquote ruled. And if you want to have a post colonial reading of this kind of an interface, then you will see how Shakespeare is not for one. Shakespeare is for everybody. And that has been proved down the ages till date. And the Bengali has appropriated, admired, made Shakespeare his own, and given Shakespeare his own brand imprint. Let us get back to the theatres. In 1839, when the former theatre was gutted, the Sasusi Theatre opened on the 21st of August in 1839. It was located where you have the present day St. Xavier's College on Park Street. So again, you will discover that the theatres were coming up in places which were inhabited primarily by the British government people. In 1852, the students of the Metropolitan Academy performed Shakespeare's plays. So now you have a kind of bonding between the academia and the stage. where students are performing Shakespeare's plays. In 1853, the students of the David Hare Academy performed Shakespeare's plays. In 3 consecutive years, 1853, 1854, and 1855, the alumni and the current students of the Oriental Academy staged on the Oriental Theatre stage 3 plays by Shakespeare. In 1853, they staged Othello. In 1854, they staged The Merchant of Venice. And in 1855, they staged Henry IV, both parts 1 and 2. So, the teaching of Shakespeare's plays, as well as their performance by the students, paved the way for the emergence of another theatre, which is the Bengali theatre, which took ideas and regarding theme as well as performance, that is practice of theatre, from this Shakespeare stage performances, and the Bengali theatre evolved from there. There are a few firsts, so I've put them together. The first Shakespeare performance in Calcutta was that of Othello in the Calcutta Theatre during 23rd to 30th December, that is Christmas time, 1780. That is towards the end of the 18th century. The first translator of Shakespeare in Bengali was not a Bengali. He was A. Monckton, and he translated The Tempest in 1809. There are records but no copies of this translated text. The first time that a Bengali took part in a Shakespearean play was in Othello at the Sarsusi Theatre in 1848, and the name of that person is Vaishnav Charan Addi, and he played the lead role of the character of Othello. The first Bengali translation of a Shakespearean play by a Bengali is a version of, if I am not mistaken, the Tempest, called Bhanumati Chittabilash by Horachandra Ghosh, and it was published in 1853. It was intended to be a textbook. Soon, there was a lot of literary activity around Shakespeare's plays. There were translations in prose and verse. There were translations from Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare. Names were not Indianized. The names were still as Shakespeare had kept them. Gurudas Hajra translated Romeo and Juliet. Muktaram Vidyasagar, as you can understand, he was a Sanskrit scholar, translated 20 tales, and Edward Roa translated 9 tales into Bengali. There were literateurs who translated Shakespeare's plays and wrote insightful essays on Shakespearean theatre. Among them may be mentioned, so this list is not exhaustive, the names of Michael Madhusudan Datta, Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Ramendra Sundar Trivedi, Haraprasad Shastri, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Rabindranath Thakur, Swami Vivekananda, Brojendranath Sheel, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai, and Sri Aurobindo. They are not all, there are others. In 1953, the Bongio Shakespeare Parishad was established, and this is one of the associations and societies which actually dealt with Shakespeare's plays, and distinguished Shakespeare scholars translated Shakespeare's plays faithfully to Bengali, and then these were used as play texts for performance. So with that now, we turn to the first of the 2 plays which we would like to focus on, since they are there in our syllabus. Macbeth. And for each of these two plays, Macbeth and Twelfth Night, we will have two broad categories: the English translations and the the English adaptations and the Bengali translations and adaptations. For the English as well as the Bengali sections, there will be two subsections. One will be on the post-independence period and the other on the pre-independence period. We will begin with the pre-independence English productions of Shakespeare's Macbeth and take a quick look at the list. You have Morris E. Bandman's company, which was a touring company and came to Kolkata during 1882 to 85 and performed at the Theatre Royal, Macbeth among other plays. All these are productions of Macbeth. Haran Chandra Rokhit, he had written the complete works of Shakespeare in 4 volumes in Bengali between 1896 and 1902, and Macbeth was included there. You have a Macbeth performance in 1900 at the University Institute Hall on the other side of the tank in College Street, in College Square. Macbeth, you have selected scenes at the Star Theatre in 1916, performed by Monmohan Goswami, who played the role of Macbeth. The murder scene in Macbeth was performed in the Star Theatre in 1917, where again Monmohan Goswami appeared in the lead role. You have another book by a person called Bimal Dotto, and it was published between 1940-45. It is a prose rendering of Shakespeare এর গল্প, tragedy or comedy. So there are certain Shakespeare plays included there in the form of golpo, prose narratives. In the post-independence period, again, the English productions would include a Macbeth by St. Xavier's College students in Shakespeareana on the 10th of October 1947 in the St. Xavier's College auditorium. Possibly this is the first post-independence production of Macbeth. Then you have scenes from Macbeth during 5 to 10th December 1950 by Norman Marshall's company in the New Empire Theatre. You have Macbeth in January 1954 again by Shakespeareana, Macbeth on the 13th of February 1954 in New Empire by Shakespeareana, Macbeth in Camera December 1963 by Harold Lang's group performed at Vishwarupa Theatre. The Tragedy of Macbeth performed between 22nd and 24th January 1981 by the Cambridge Theatre Company at Robindra Sadan. Shakespeare, the Works, adaptations of Macbeth performed on the 22nd of December 1986 by the London Mime Theatre at G.D. Birla Sabhaghar. Now we come to the Bengali productions and go back to the pre-independence times. The first one was an adaptation with a Bangla name, Rudropal Natok, adapted by Horolal Rai, performed on the 31st of August 1874 at the Great National Theatre. Then you have Macbeth, translated by Girish Chandra Ghosh, performed first on the 28th of January 1893 at the Minerva Theatre. Now I may mention in passing that the Minerva Theatre played a key role in Shakespeare performances in Kolkata. Excuse me. You have a part of a translation of Macbeth by none other than Rabindranath Tagore, which has been recovered. The date I have not been able to find. You have a Macbeth on the 28th of November 1899 using Girish Chandra Ghosh's translation, which was performed at the Classic Theatre, which later became the Star Theatre. You have selected scenes from Ghosh's translation of Macbeth, performed on the 29th of September 1926, again in the Star Theatre. You have selected scenes from Ghosh's translation of Macbeth in February 1945, performed at Rangmahal. After that, we come straight to the post-independent period. And in the post-independence period, we have in 1951 a performance of Macbeth by Utpal Datta in the Jatra form. Datta said, and I quote from him, that his purpose is, quote, to shake the audience out of its unthinking stupor by sensation, visual surprise, songs, dances, color on stage, unquote. I have borrowed this quotation from Nandini and Pradeep Bhattacharya's essay, A Weapon of Change, an interview with Utpal Datta, published in the Sunday Statesman on the 3rd of November 1985. A partial production of Macbeth was performed in 1952 by the Indian People's Theatre Association, and it was a translation by Nirendranath Roy. A full-fledged production of Macbeth based on Nirendranath Roy's translation was performed in 1954 by the Robindro Natya Parishad. Again in 1954, the Little Theatre Group performed Macbeth in many places, which include Minerva Theatre, New Empire Theatre, Rangmahal Theatre, Vishwarupa Theatre, and the Uttarpara Public Library grounds. Now, this Uttarpara Public Library and its adjacent grounds are the site for many historical events and are a place where many important persons have visited. So I will leave that by, because that will call for another long discussion which is irrelevant here. The translation which was used by the Little Theatre Group for this series of performances was by Jyotindranath Sengupta. On the 10th of January 1987, Grontic produced Macbeth in their own production. Scenes from Macbeth appeared significantly on the 23rd of April 1996 and were performed by the Shakespeare Society of Eastern India at the British Council. Again, scenes from Macbeth were performed on the 23rd of April 1996 by Theatre Workshop on Madhusudan Moncho, and they used Ashok Mukhopadhyay's translation of Macbeth. By the way, I have forgotten to mention Professor Ashok Mukhopadhyay. He is also a Shakespeare scholar and a personality who is deeply engaged with the theatre movement. In 2012, you have Kaushik Shane's version of Macbeth produced by his own theatre group, Shapno Shandhani. And in 2018, you have Macbeth Mira by Kollani Kalamandalam, which is an adaptation, and those who have written the adaptation are Shantanu Datta and Professor Dattatreya Datta. The production was directed by Shantanu Datta. With that, now we stop with a look at the theatre, the stage responses to Macbeth in Kolkata and nearabouts, and turn to the other play in our syllabus, Twelfth Night, and engage ourselves with Twelfth Night in a similar fashion. So, we first move to, there is no record as such of the English productions. Just let me take a look. No, they are all Bengali productions, and the first one in the pre-independence time would be Shushila Chandraketu, 12th Night, translated to Bengali by Kanti Chandra Vidyaratna. And you can take a look at the cover of this text available on the internet. It was published from Calcutta by Ishwar Chandra Bosu in 1279 Bengali year. It is a prose narrative. So it is not meant for the stage performance. Then you have Haran Chandra Rokit's 12th Night, which is included in the complete works of Shakespeare in 4 volumes, about which I have already spoken to you while discussing Macbeth. In the post independence period, we find that 12th Night was acted on the Bengali stage, and you have the first one by Utpal Dotto, and it was produced by his little theatre group at the Minerva Theatre. The exact date for this production I have not been able to trace, but it is mentioned that it was immediately after independence that he undertook this project. In 1954, the little theatre group again produced 12th Night at the Minerva Theatre. Then you have Illyria Rath, translated by Dattatreya Dotto and produced by the Theatre Arts Workshop in 2009, and it was directed by Professors Dattatreya Dotto and Amitabh Roy, whose audio lecture has already been uploaded. By the way, I have made a tremendous mistake because there are 2 other Shakespeare scholars whose name I should have mentioned, but I have sorrily forgotten. And they are Professors Amitabh Roy and Professor Sudhir Kumar Thor, both of Rabindra Bharati University. And Professor Dattatreya Dotto belongs to the drama department of Rabindra Bharati University. He is also a Shakespeare scholar. Ichche Tithir Golpo is a retitled version of Illyria Rath with minor changes made by Dattatreya Dotto. It is available and it is a version which can be acted. The most recent one is an adaptation called Mumbai Nights, written by Debashish Roy and produced by Minerva Repertory. I have not been able to collect the date of this production. Now, there are many societies and associations who have encouraged the standing, reading, using the original text for performance, using Bengali translations and adaptations for performance on the stage and beyond. And among them is Shakespeare Society of Eastern India, which is very active because it is one umbrella organization under which there is the scope for conducting research, there is the scope for publication, there is the scope for participating in biannual international conferences on anything to do with Shakespeare, including studies, including criticism, and including performances in of Shakespeare across the globe. So, with that, I could say that it was a brief look at the response to Macbeth and 12th Night in Bengal, in English and Bengali performances before and after independence. Although, as far as 12th Night is concerned, it is very clear that very little data is available. Macbeth, no doubt, has always been one of Shakespeare's most popular plays across the globe, and therefore the response to Macbeth in Kolkata has matched the global demand and response for Macbeth. 12th Night has had to compete with other plays like The Tempest, A Winter's Tale, A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Comedy of Errors, and so must have found it very difficult to be equal to Macbeth. Nevertheless, 12th Night has not been completely ignored. Before I move on, I should like to mention something very interesting to you. A teacher of English in City College, Kolkata, Professor Shishir Kumar Bhaduri, later gave up his profession as a teacher to become a professional theatre personality. Shishir Kumar Bhaduri has never acted, produced, directed in a Shakespeare play. This has been pointed out by critics and researchers who work on this area. Some of them have guessed that this must have been because of his very close connection with English literature and Shakespeare as a teacher. And he must have felt that there was enough of Shakespeare and he had moved on and beyond the Shakespearean stage to making experiments, inquiries, and further inroads into the development of the Bengali theatre, which was apart from Shakespearean performances. So, with that, then, let us get back to our discussion. There are very good research works on the post colonial issues related to this area, and some of them are Post Colonial Shakespeare Revisited, an essay by Josna Singh and Gitanjali Sahani in Critical Debates and Reviews, pages 127 to 138, published on the 13th of April 2010, available online. You have Shakespeare Studies in Colonial Bengal, the Early Phase, which is a very interesting study by Hema Dahiya, published from Newcastle upon Tyne by Cambridge Scholars Publishing in 2013. So that was all that I could put together for a discussion on the subcontinental response on the stage and in the classroom to Shakespeare, with a focus on Bengal, particularly on Calcutta stroke Kolkata. Now I would suggest that you could write a skit based on Macbeth and or Twelfth Night, and by way of a passing reference, I can say that we had done something similar when I was in Raja Parimohan College, Uttarpara, and we had named it Stranger Than Strangest. I had written the script, which is available in academia.edu now, and it was based on Macbeth and A Midsummer Night's Dream because these were the two texts in our syllabus, and the students had actually performed the play, and it is a very short skit. So you could try the same thing with Macbeth and Twelfth Night, and then we could get it performed uh, when we all get back to our normal life in the university. With that, I come to the end of whatever I had to say, and now I open this meeting for discussion, questions, comments. You can unmute your phone and one by one you can put in a word, please. Yes, Bapi? Subhash, would you like to say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Subhash, please.
I have a question here.
Yes.
You have mentioned that two scholar of Shakespeare that they are from Rabindra Bharati University.
Two
That
teachers, they
they
are two professors.
oh, I see. So what are those? What are their names, sir?
One person is the person who has been very kind to deliver the audio lecture which is there in your ILMS, Professor Amitabh Roy, whom you must have seen. He comes to our university sometimes on academic work. And the other person is
Mm.
Professor Shubir Kumar Dhor, who also comes to our university, but you may not have seen him. These are the two persons who are deeply engaged with the Shakespeare Society of Eastern India, apart from Professor Dattatreya Datta. Professor
Okay, ma'am.
Amitabh Roy and Professor Shubir Kumar Dhar. They are the two persons.
Okay.
All right, Sagorika.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what do you want to say?
ম্যাম আমি বলছিলাম যে মানে আপনি যে কন্টিনেন্টাল আর
In English,
সাবকন্টিনেন্টাল
if
এই স্টেজ
possible, Sagorika, parle English e bolo.
In English,
sorry ma'am. Ma'am, I want to say that you have already discussed with us Shakespeare's subcontinental and continental stage. So ma'am, do you have any PDF on this topic?
I don't have a PDF. I have a PowerPoint presentation. If you want it, this is the one which I have used. You have seen it on your screen. Now, if you want it, then I can upload it. Do you want this? Then I will upload it in the ILMS.
Yes ma'am.
Okay, then I will upload it in the ILMS. Thank you for asking me. All right, I will get it uploaded for you.
Ma'am, you told that on some website which is JSTOR,
Yes.
that is there any material available on this website?
Yes, the JSTOR material is available for all of us now. It is open because of this epidemic, or rather the pandemic. JSTOR has opened many of its papers for public viewing without a membership. So you can actually access these. I have accessed them and I have found that they are accessible. That is why I have mentioned them. So when I upload the PowerPoint, they will also be there in the PowerPoint. You can just take a look. Before that, I will post them in your WhatsApp group so that you can immediately access them. That would be all right, I think.
Okay, ma'am, and you told us to write a skit on Macbeth and 12th Night, and you have also written this. Can we see this?
Yes, it is in academia.edu. https://www.academia.edu. And the name is Stranger Than Strangest. You can
Okay,
actually
ma'am.
act it out if you want.
Okay, ma'am.
It is a comedy based on Macbeth and A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay.
So that is
madam.
my response to Shakespeare. All right. Anyone else? Bapi has
Okay, ma'am.
unmuted his phone. Yes, Bapi, what do you want to say?
Madam, one question. That you have said that the very perspective of the theatrical personality, their personality, their perspective was humanistic. Their perspective was secular humanist perspective.
Yes.
You have already told.
Yes.
So my question, that is there any another perspective?
Of course. Say, for example, we are not looking at the Tempest, but the Tempest has called for a lot of post-colonial interpretation, as you know. And you have lots of essays from the post-colonial perspective on the Tempest. There are gender issues in those plays which use cross-dressing, where a woman has to disguise herself as a man. You have gender readings, that is feminist readings. You have Marxist readings of a play like, say, The Merchant of Venice. So you can have different theoretical approaches to these plays. Sometimes in the classroom, our teachers have also discussed the plays from these perspectives. But the general trend is to have a secular, humanist approach to the plays so that Shakespeare can be read by anyone and everyone, and he arrives to an understanding of the reader, particularly the student who is being trained in reading Shakespeare from a very broad perspective.
Okay, another point.
Yes.
Another is that my question. That's in individually Shakespeare was writing some there are so many plays, so many prose. But my question: what was the perspective of Shakespeare himself, or own self, to write the plays? Again, I am
Yes.
repeating that what was the perspective of Shakespeare when he was writing his plays or prose?
His prose
particularly
is very
Macbeth.
little. It is embedded in his plays themselves, because the plays are mostly in verse with intersperses of prose interspersed, I'm sorry, in between. But what you mean to say, if I am guessing correctly, is that was he a secular humanist? Isn't it?
Okay,
That
what
is
was his
your
own?
question. Was he a secular
Yes, yes.
humanist too? About his being secular, personally, I do not have very strong evidence against it, because he has been equally compassionate, sympathetic, respectful towards those persons, those characters in his plays who were non Christian. For example, Shylock, one of the best examples in this case. Shylock was a Jew, and the Jews were non Christians. The Christians hated the Jews, although they depended on their Jews for very important financial matters. So the Christians could not throw the Jews out of their society because they were economically indispensable. But at the same time, socially and culturally, they hated the Jews. Now, Shakespeare was a Christian, and from that point of view, he could have made fun of Shylock, but he doesn't. He treats Shylock with equal compassion and allows Shylock, if I may use a very strong word, equal space with the other characters in the play who make fun of him. So, this would serve as an example that he had a secular bent of mind. There is yet another character in your 12th night, the character of Malvolio, whom, as Professor Amitabh Roy in his audio lecture has pointed out, many directors, producers, and even actors have treated with greater importance in comparison to Orsino or Olivia and even Viola and Festi in 12th Night, because Malvolio was a Puritan. He was being treated as the butt of ridicule by the other characters in the play, particularly Sir Toby Belch, Sir Andrew Aguecheek, Festi to a certain extent, Maria. These are the characters who make fun of Malvolio, but not Shakespeare. He treats Malvolio with equal respect and sympathy. Apart from these characters, you can see that in the entire portrait gallery of Shakespeare's plays, not a single character, be he or she the protagonist, a major character, a terrible villain, or a very minor character, you will find that Shakespeare has given that person his or her due space in the play. An example would be the porter in Macbeth, Lady Macduff, who appears in only one scene, her little boy, who appears in only one scene. All these characters have become immemorable to us. Even that messenger boy whom Macbeth addresses as way-faced, the doctor of physic, the waiting gentlewoman. Can you forget these characters? Because he has been completely humanitarian towards them. So, the basic premise of an understanding of Shakespeare's plays would be an understanding of his mind. And that mind was the mind of an ordinary man who had ordinary sensibilities, who had ordinary sensitivity to all the feelings, emotions, the ups and downs of moods, the behavioral patterns of human beings. But Shakespeare was extraordinary in transforming those ordinary things to a form of art which made these characters, who are also mirrors for equal persons available around us in all times, in all communities, in all places, we somehow feel as if we know these persons. And that is possible because of Shakespeare's extraordinary talent for representation of what he saw around him on the stage in a language which was his own. So he gave to the English stage, to English literature and the English language something out of his extraordinary ability. That is why the secular humanism, which was the basic premise used by the teachers in imparting the knowledge of Shakespeare to us, even today, the legacy that is being carried forward by your own teachers, Professors Debashish Bandyopadhyay and Joydeep Ghosh, is that legacy. So it is a direct line. If you follow tradition and the individual talent, it is a direct line from Shakespeare down to you yourself that has been borne forth by your teachers and by performances.
Okay.
All right, Omkita, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Can you suggest any ebooks that we can access in this time?
uh, Regarding Shakespeare studies of this nature, I could not find too many ebooks. There are certain books in the Google book section, and you can access certain pages, you cannot read all of them. So you don't have complete books. I have searched, I myself needed some books because frankly all my
Okay.
good books are in Midnapore. I have left them behind. When I came, I did not know that the lockdown would be there and I would be miserably separated from my books like I have been separated from you. So I used whatever material I had in soft copy version, and some of these very good books, there are very good books, but they are not in the e form. I am looking for them. If I find them, then I will post the links in your WhatsApp group. I think that will be helpful.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
anybody else with a question? Pooja Mondal? No? Okay, then, Bapi, do you have any further questions? Who is this?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Who are you?
I'm Sagorika Books.
Oh, yes, Shagurika. Yes. Yes. What is your question?
Ma'am, the question is not related to this topic, but certainly the question came in my mind that why did Shakespeare use the concept of supernatural power in most of his plays?
No, he did not use the supernatural in most of his plays. He used the supernatural in some of his plays, but he used them very powerfully.
Yes, ma'am, but
Say, for
why?
example, in 12th Night, you don't have the supernatural. You have these guys, you have cross
Yes.
dressing, you have songs, dance, you have different aspects of love, but you don't have the supernatural. But in A Midsummer Night's Dream, you have the supernatural. And in Macbeth, you have the supernatural. Now, the
And
good
Hamlet?
supernatural and the bad supernatural, put in a very bad way, are the two kinds of supernatural that you have. The bad supernatural is there to do ill to human beings. The good supernatural is there to do good to human beings. So maybe we want the good supernatural to be there and the bad supernatural not to be there in our lives. Now, what is the supernatural? The supernatural is the creation of human beings. And in Shakespeare's time, people were very superstitious. The king himself was very interested in witchcraft and demonology. As you know, he has even written books. King James the First has written books on witchcraft and demonology. So if the king himself is so interested in this kind of an aspect of human life, on which science would beg to differ to believe in, what would you say? So, what was Shakespeare actually doing? If the king himself believes in witchcraft and demonology, and this play is written with the king in mind, because you must remember that Shakespeare belonged, number one, to the king's men. Number two, he was writing this play, Macbeth, at a time when James the First was on the throne of England. Number three, very important, he was using chronicle history and he was using a character who was said to be the forefather of James I, the character of Banquo. And by the time we finish reading Macbeth, we know that Banquo was not as good as he is shown to be in Macbeth. So Banquo is used as a foil to the character of Macbeth. So you can say that given the example of Macbeth as it is, Shakespeare was actually catering to two aspects. Number one, he was trying to please the king, who was his patron. And number two, he was trying to make his play what you call today a super duper hit. Like you have a super hit film, it had to be a super hit performance. And to make the performance super hit, you will use everything that the mass of the audience likes to see. Like you have many films on nags and nagins who take human form, and then you have a whole film on that. Similarly, in Shakespeare's time, why the use of serpents in film? Because the cult of the serpent is very interesting to the Indian. So it is used in film as a theme. Now you transfer that to witches and you take the English audience of Shakespeare's time. This audience liked to believe in witches. They believed that the witches wore black clothes. They wore a capering cap. They had long nails, a peaking nose like the beak of an eagle. They had beards and they laughed in a very shrill manner. They spoke in a nasal tone and they traveled on rasta jhaat deya lomba danda যুক্ত ঝাঁটার মতন ঝাঁটায়. So they used to travel on ঝাড়ুস. তিনবার বাইকে কিক দেওয়ার মতন পাটাকে কিক দিয়ে তারপরে ঝাঁটায় করে তারা উড়ে এক জায়গা থেকে আরেক জায়গায় চলে যেতেন. So that was the witch. And the witches always did evil. They traveled fast and they always brought evil to humankind. The people liked to believe in it. They believed that the supernatural would interact with you if you addressed it first. So in the play, you will find that the witches are always addressed first by Macbeth or whoever. So that is as far as the witches are concerned. The other aspect of the supernatural, which all of us love to believe in but are very scared of, are the ghosts. So if you have a ghost in the play, it would be fantastic. So you have a combination of witches and a ghost, and that makes Macbeth exceptionally acceptable to the groundlings who are standing there by paying a shilling to get their money's worth of entertainment. So in that entertainment, you have both Daini and Booth. All right. And in Hamlet again,
Okay.
Hamlet's father's ghost has to be there in order to externalize that inner process that is going on in Hamlet, because Hamlet is a study in psychology. And if the person who is playing Hamlet just comes to the stage and stands there for hours on end, rolling his eyes as if he is thinking very hard and deep, that will not work. So in order to externalize Hamlet's psychological processes, his father's booth is absolutely indispensable. Any other question? Comment? Okay then, shall I stop here with your permission? I shall stop today's discussion here and I shall upload whatever material I have here with me, and I will post some of the links in your WhatsApp group. And I propose